Done. Okay, let's go ahead and begin reading chapter 6. I want to read the entire chapter as it is our custom, and then we want to come back and we want to look at. If I can get a reader begin reading at chapter 6, verse 1 through verse 17, then we'll come back and we'll break it down. For our focal verses tonight will only be the first part of the 6 series. Okay.
And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were the noise of thunder, one of the 4 beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw and beheld a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given unto him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." And when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, "Come and see." And I looked and beheld a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto him over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. And when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God, and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwelt on the earth?" And white robes were given unto every one of them. And it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. And I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll, and when it is rolled together, the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together. And every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains of the mighty men, and every bondman and every freeman hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountain, and said to the mountains and rocks, "Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb." And verse 17, "For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand?"
Okay. Thank you for reading our text. And I pray that all read the text with him, as one of the promises of the blessings that come out of chapter 1 is for us reading it. And then, of course, to continue with is that we would understanding. And that's why we're going to have some teaching tonight. Okay. All right. I want to get some, I got a number of things I got here. I see what happened even with my update. It did not update the one thing. So I want to go ahead and kind of tag us over. So first of all, chapter 5, if you remember chapter 4 and 5, I said that was a break. End of the church age after chapter 3. You see the commission of John, the writer, in chapter 1, to write the things that have been, the things that are, the things that will be. The things that will be is the beginning of chapter 4. When we went into worship, we began to see what happened there. And then last week when we left, we were in chapter 5, because chapter 4 and chapter 5, as I said, were it not for our slack of time, I would have taught those together. However, it's right here in chapter 5 that what we left with last week was the lamb, lion, symbolized by Christ, who lion of the tribe of Judah, lion that was slain, but yet standing, now standing. When we stopped in chapter 5, John introduced us to the 7 sealed book that the Lamb had now possessed. Remember, it was in the land, it was in the hand of God, who he set up on the throne, and then the Lamb that was found worthy got this book. So I got to illustrate, and what I'm trying to emphasize is that for all practical purpose, all attention now is on the Lamb and this book, the 7 sealed book. And so for the next few chapters, that's going to be, that's really the gist, if you will. I'm not going to say it's the most important thing, because I really personally feel chapters 2 and 3, along with chapter 1, are the most important things. But when you come to chapter 4 and 5 and see worship happening, and then you see this item that was acquired at worship, acquired by the throne, by the Lamb, chapter 5, John introduces us to this 7 sealed book. And so in chapter 6, what we have, of course, is the opening of this book, the beginning of the opening, the breaking of, it ain't just a seal, it ain't just a singular seal book, it's 7 seals. And every time a seal is open, it corresponds to an activity or an event that will be, that will go parallel with a timeline for the containment of that book to be read. So what chapter 6 deals with is the revelation from this event of opening the book now held by the Lamb, and John's privilege, and now our privilege to know, his privilege to see and write, our privilege to know and study what was in the book, what happened as a relationship to the seals being broken, so we can actually see what God already knows is going on. So he and the Lamb, God on the throne, the Lamb who now possesses the book, didn't need the book for their sake. We needed the book, and that's why John was tearful when no one was found worthy to open up the book. So this is going to depict where we're going to be going at in the next few weeks, and we'll get it. We're going to chisel at it, because it's going to be remarkably deep, because it's largely symbolic. Okay, so here we go. You got the verses, so I didn't put these up to read, so I want to save our time since we did that. I want to note some things though. Chapter 6, if you read it, and you know that we got in chapter 5 a book with 7 seals, then it didn't take a whole lot for you to look at chapter 6 and say, wait a minute, that's not the whole story of all the 7 seals. All you got in chapter 6 is the beginning of opening 6 of the 7 seals. So chapter 6 is not all of the 7 seals, it's only, Diane, 6 of the 7 seals. And the first 4 seal kind of correspond with some figures that we're probably going to exhaust our time on tonight. The first 4 seals deal with the 4 horsemen, namely the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, and the pale horse. And we're gonna spend the remainder of our time on those tonight, because I want to do that as exegesis. But I do want to give you right now the outline for the remainder, and I want to give you something else that I think may help you, because I believe that some of you are going to study around this even in your private time. So part 2, he's going to deal with the martyrs. These are people, martyrs, other word we use there for witnesses. And these are the ones in verses 9 through 11 who are going to be killed, are going to be punished, are going to be persecuted for the sake of their beliefs. Okay, so this is going to add to the why when tribulation happens, the church ain't going to be completely away, or the believers are not going to be completely away. And we're going to actually see some of that. We'll spend a little time with that passage, okay? Then part 3, the divine judgment scene. This is actually scene number 1, because in the sixth, the first part 1 of the first 4, we're gonna get part 1 tonight. Hopefully that's we will get part 2 and 3, because we're gonna get the martyrs in divine scene number 1, and that's when God's wrath begins in verses 12 through 17. Okay, chapter 17. Excuse 17. Chapter 7 is going to help us to begin to look at the believers in the great tribulation, or this period of punishment, because chapter 7 does not deal with a seal. We have to get to chapter 8 to get with the 7th seal. The 7th seal actually begins to be opened in chapter 8. So I wanted to kind of give you an overview on what we're going through in this next part. So the 7th seal, divine judgment scene 2, is going to be part chapter 8. So chapter 6, we're going to be dealing with 6 seals. Chapter 7, especially after the 6th seal, which is the I want to say the preliminary judgment of God, punishment. We're going to see what happens to believers during the tribulation, chapter 7. And then in chapter 8, we'll see a continued of the divine judgment of God, which will carry us to a number of other chapters. Okay, so, but that's where it begins. That's the 7th seal, where you'll begin to see some bowls and some vials, etc. But we want to get to where we are now. Okay, let me give you one more thing before I give you chapter 6, and that's what did not take place. I must not have updated the right PowerPoint. So here's what I need you to get. I want you to see some careful textual inclusions or comparisons, and my other has it visual. I'll make sure that I put it on the PowerPoint before I distribute the PowerPoints. But I need someone to turn to Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9. Because we're dealing tonight we're going to begin to deal with the preface for the Great Tribulation. And I want somebody to look at Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. And Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. And then I want to do that. And then I want us to go to a New Testament passage. These are correlational texts that's going to help us to kind of undergird the timeline of Revelation 6. Okay, so if I can get a reader, 9:27, and then I'm going to need another reader for Matthew, but I don't want you to go there. I want us all to see this verse.
I have it, Pastor. Okay, and he shall, oh shoot, it changed on me.
That was Terrence. I got you. That's good. Terrence, you must be echoing off of
okay, I'm reading. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate.
Now, I told you when we started Revelation that there is there are actually key Old Testament passages that are absolutely necessary for us to understand properly or get a better understanding of what Revelation writes. And without trying to make it very deep or something, here's one of those things, one of the verses out of the Daniel passage, the prophetic passage of Daniel, because I said when preaching, we often hear chapters 1 through 6. We may even hear a little bit of chapter 12, but we hear nothing of chapter 6, 7, well, chapter 1 through 5, some of chapter 6, but we don't, the latter part of chapter 6, all the way up to chapter 12 of the book of Daniel, rarely do we hear it preached, because again, this belongs to the prophetic part that is a key to understanding the book of Revelation. It's just the Old Testament thing he tells later on to shut up. Well, notice what he tells to shut up is directly correlated to what we're doing tonight. He mentions a time that's kind of confirmed by a week. When you talk about a week and we're talking about prophetic numbers, 7 days, or what you may want to hear is a 7,000, or the 7 days, or the seven-year prophecy day with the Lord is as a year. But you're going to hear Daniel also refer to this as the 3.5 day time, times, and the dividing of a time, which is a 3.5, or a midweek or a mid-year prophecy. Hope I didn't confuse you then. 7 days, a day to God is like a year. We call it the 7 year, if for 7 years it's going to happen. You hear all those times that I mentioned about before, but I want to kind of give you the base work on it. Daniel refers to it a time, singular, times, plural, and a dividing of a time, which is half. So singular, plural, 2, 3, making a total of 3.5 years, or midweek. Notice what Daniel says in chapter 9, verse 27. He's going to do this for 1 week. That's that 1 week we refer to. In the midst of the week, that's that 3.5 year, if you will, prophecy, caused by sacrifice and the oblation to cease. An oblation is a part of a worship ritual, like in the pouring out. It's called an oblation, okay? Now, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate. In other words, the abominations and desolation are going to happen. We're going to call this one particular period by which worship is augmented and problems are rising. Now, for us to get even a better picture of that, he said, even until the consummation, in other words, when it's all over. Now, if you really want to add a little clarity to it, let's go to the Matthew passage real quick. Matthew chapter 24. And for those of you who may want to kind of make this in your notes, Matthew 24 is Jesus's prophecy of the end day. Matter of fact, let's all go there real quick. Let's all go there. I want to spend a little time there. It will help us to prime chapter 6 of Revelation. Matthew chapter 24. And when you get to Matthew 24, even though I have verse 15 as my focal verse, I want you to kind of see why that becomes important. If you look at verse number 1 and 2, no, excuse me, verse number 3. And he sat upon the Mount of Olives. This is chapter 24 of Matthew, okay? And he sat upon the Mount of Olives. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? Y'all notice the question that was raised to Christ, right? Because what I skipped over, and I probably shouldn't skip it because we do have the time, and I really don't want to leave anybody behind. I don't want to leave a loose end. The question of verse 1, the question of verse 3 was in directly response to verses 1 and 2. Jesus went out and departed in the temple, and his disciples came unto him for to show him the building of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say to you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now, they caught this as predictions of a time of end time coming. We do know that the time of this happening was around AD 33. This is right before the crucifixion. The temple was torn down in AD 70. Tearing down of the temple was done in AD 70. That would have been about 37 years in the future of the raising down of the temple. And this was important because they held the temple so unique that Christ was letting them know that the temple was going to be torn down, and that would be in their day, in their lifespan, okay? Now, when they raised the question to more than the temple, though. They say, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world, or the age, if you will? And Jesus answered them. And from this particular passage, there are like 9 signs that are given in Matthew 24 that are signs of the end time. There are 9 signs, about 9 signs that are given about signs of the end time. And these signs kind of correlate to everything we're reading in chapter 6. So if y'all want to write it down, I'll go ahead and write down, first of all, war. Put down war. Write down war. I didn't put it on the print, but I'll put it on there later. Right. War. Yes, ma'am. Is there a question?
What year was that? You said the temple was torn down?
80-70.
AD 70. Thank you.
Okay. Now, if you put down war, look at what Jesus says in verses 6 and 7. Okay. And Jesus answered, I'm gonna start at verse 4. And Jesus answered and said unto him, take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. So we know deception's coming. So we'll talk about that. And ye shall hear wars, and what? Rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So a precursor to him coming is what? Wars. Okay. Look at, that's verses 6 and 7. Okay, 6 and 7. For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there should be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these things are what? The beginning of sorrows. Underline that if you got a chance to, because when we start talking about the season of desolation, we're talking about the same season. Matter of fact, I'm gonna skip ahead and give you that verse I was giving you intentionally, and then we'll work back up to it. Look at verse 15, same chapter 24, verse 15. Am I going too fast? If I am going too fast, hold your hand up, say pump your brakes. Okay, y'all got me? Verse 15. Verse 15 says, when ye shall therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whosoever read and let it understand, then let him which is in Judea flee to the mountains. Okay, when you should see whoever this person is, stand in the holy place. Okay, that's what it is. He calls it the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. So let's kind of fix that for simplicity. What he's saying is, when you see the abomination of desolation, stand, a personification of a person, stand in the where? Holy place. Okay, so who's standing in the holy place is the abomination of desolation. Okay, that's what is a personification of a person. So important you get this, because we're going to actually deal with this in chapter 6, verse 1 and 2 tonight. Okay, now, but first of all, you saw wars, right? Write down secondly, famine. Famine. You see that in verse number 7. Okay. Look at verse number 7. Well, I read 7. Let's read 8 and 9. All these things are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Right? So write down the third thing is death. That's gonna be Matthew chapter 24, 7 through 9. That's death.
Pastor,
Yes, sir.
why'd you leave out the pestilence and earthquakes?
Well, I put pestilence with famine.
Okay, so I just heard you say famine. So
Yeah.
all those three go together?
Yes.
Okay.
Natural disasters, but famine and yada yada. Okay. Now, put down martyrdom. I put death down, but put martyrdom, because I think that's important, because it's going to help us to also define the fact that, see, it's hard to be a martyr, to kill for your belief, if the church or if believers are delivered. Uh-oh, y'all catch me? All right. So put down martyrdom.
Now, can you say that again?
It's hard to be a martyr if it would be impossible for there to be martyrs if we're talking about tribulation and if all of the believers are taken to heaven during the season of tribulation. It would be hard to be a martyr. Okay? So we're going to see martyrdom, which is the killing of people because of their faith. Okay? You see that in verses 9 and 10, and also in verses 16. You see it all the way through 22. The abomination of desolation is that whole part. I'll read it. Then let him which is in Judea flee to the mountain. Let him which is in the housetop not come down, nor take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be, except those days should be shortened. There should be no flesh saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Okay, I read through 22. Okay, now I wanted to give you clarity on that because you saw right now you just have war, famine, death, martyrdom. I need you to see sun, moon darken, sun and moon darken, stars felling, the stars felling, okay? So we got sun and moon darken, stars felling. Write down verse 29. Go ahead with me, if you will. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. Okay, so that's another sign. Okay, I want you to just, because you're going to, again, everything I'm giving you, I'm telling you to write down the verse from Matthew. And then what I'm going to do right before I go to what you see on my print, I want to give you the Revelation 6 equivalent. Okay. All right. The final one is divine judgment, because we said the divine judgment is going to be the first, how chapter 6 ends, right?
Pastor,
Yes, sir.
before you go to the divine judgment, I'm just thinking that it's scary starting to hear about all these private companies and these rich people taking flights into outer space and setting up things in outer space, when it's talking about the heavens and the sky and the moon and the sun and the stars are going to fall. Just hearing about that is kind of scary in light of what we're reading here.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it seems I'm going to use Mike Tyson's word, ludicrous. But if you think about it, watch this. The question ought to be asked, have we grown any smarter? In the flood, during Noah's time, right after the flood, instead of repenting and getting right, they built a tower to get out of the way. Okay?
Yeah, that's good.
Do you think a spaceship gonna get you out of God's hand if in fact the stars fall?
That's good.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we ain't got no smarter. We just, technology has increased. We learn to make I'm gonna put it this way. We've learned to make bigger towers. Our Tower of Babel is just bigger. Okay, so great point. Now, the final thing is divine judgment. Now, I'm gonna give you the verses on this, but I'm not gonna read it because it would take a long time. Okay, the warning of divine judgment in Jesus's response to that question, because as I told you, this whole thing in chapter 4 is spurned by the disciples asking a question. When they asked a question, Jesus did not stop at the verse I ended. He actually gives the arrival of the Son of Man in verses 20, 29, and 30. He talks about the parable of a fig tree. He talks about being ready in 30 and 32 through 39. He talks about a faithful and wise slave in verse 45. And he uses all of chapter 25 to talk about this same thing. It is all connected. So the warning about divine judgment begins at chapter 24, verse 32, all the way to chapter 25 and verse 26. So he uses all that to warning. Now, on the side of the 6 points I just gave you, write this down and then we'll start. On the war, write down Revelation chapter 6, verse 3 and 4. On the famine, write down Revelation chapter 6, verse 5 and 6. On the death, write down Revelation chapter 6, verse 7 and 8. On the martyrdom, write down Revelation chapter 6, verses 9 through 11. On the sun, moon, darkened, stars falling, write down Revelation chapter 6, verses 12 through 14. And then when you look at divine judgment, look at Revelation chapter 6, verses 15, 16, and 17. You'll see that the same parallel exists between Matthew 24 and 25, his dispensation to his disciples, and now what John has the extra and added benefit of hearing happens as the scrolls are opened up in heaven. Okay, does this make sense? Okay, so let's work. Did I lose anybody in any of that? Okay, let's go to Revelation chapter number 6, verses 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are the only things that you didn't say are parallel to, but I want to begin because this is going to open up a major, we got 20 minutes and I started late. Wow. Okay, so here we are. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, one of the 4 beasts saying, come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Now, I told you when I start teaching this, there's a number of different speculations on this, and I'm gonna give you the speculation that I think is an error on this interpretation, because this first thing is the first of 4 horsemen. And if we're going to talk about the 4 horsemen, there's some things we can absolutely answer. We can talk about who they are. I mean, what they are. You know, we can talk about, okay, the Lamb breaks the first 4 seals, and the appearance of the, okay, I put the thing up here. The appearance of the Antichrist and his power. Okay, so some think that this person that shows up in the first horse is Christ. Okay, and you'll read a number of things that may refer to that. Some writers I have some respect for, a lot of respect for. But I think as we go through it, and what I'm going to argue and what I'm going to ask you to look at is, I think you got to look at contextual interpretation. The rule of contextual interpretation means we got to look at all 4 angels in sync, because all 4 angels are giving commands. They're doing some stuff. We're going to look at it. And I believe that if we look at this, it's going to actually outline the Antichrist. Okay. The white being a symbol of false righteousness. Okay. All right. So here it is. I saw a lamb. Matter of fact, and here's the picture I want you to get. Here's one. And I see your hand, Terrence. I'll come right to you. But here's the picture I want you to get. When and we're going to focus tonight on the first 8 verses, which are the 4 horsemen. And so based upon our time, we may just get to 3 of them, but we're going to set the coursework criteria out right now. What happens as each one of the seals are open, he sees some things, but when he sees some things, I want you to note something. When he opens the first seal, notice that it was the beast, one of the beasts that spoke to him. Okay, one of the beasts that spoke to him. Now, when he opens the second seal, out of the 4 beasts around the throne that we start talking about, who they, what they personify, or what the personification is last week. When he opens a second beast will tell him, come and see. When he opens the third seal, a third beast in that 4 beasts will say, come and see. And I don't want us to lose the picture of the word beast, because later on we talk about the mark of the beast. Really, the language in its original kind of defines a living creature. So some translation would actually say the four living creatures, okay? Because it shouldn't be depicted in a narrow or negative sense at this particular point, okay? So, Terrence, you got a question before? If you unmute yourself, I see your hand up.
Hear me?
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, I was just making the point to confirm that 9 at Daniel 27 was talking about the beast, right? It was talking about the Antichrist, not Christ.
Yeah, we're talking about the Antichrist, and we're talking about not Christ. And exactly, we said in Daniel, which is why I took you there, Daniel prophesies that there has to be a time when the what? The Antichrist is what?
Rule.
Released. Okay. Thessalonians actually teaches that there shall come that God will, check this out, y'all. God will send a delusion, a strong delusion, that God will allow a strong delusion to happen. And you got to actually think of this in light of, and I'm going to make some applications to this as we talk about it. A strong delusion so that people would believe a lie. Remember, the Antichrist don't look like the devil. Antichrist means he favors Christ, but he's not. He's opposed to Christ. He's anti. He's opposed to his agenda. And we would not have a problem if the Antichrist looked like the devil. Okay, so this is why it's going to undergird why I'm going to in the very first one. This is the loosening of what Thessalonians 3 talks about in reference to the abomination of desolation. When you see, think about when you see him, the abomination of desolation, chapter 15 of Matthew 24, we read it, stand where? In the holy place. So what we have in this passage is we have the noise, we see seal number 1 open, noise and thunder, one of the beasts saying, come see, which drew him closer, and he saw, behold, a white horse. First one is defined as a white horse. Now, if you notice the chart I gave you, I didn't start with verses 1 and 2. I started with verses 3 and 4 as pertaining to the symptoms. Verse 1 and 2 actually is a conqueror. This one is the conqueror, or the what I want to call the Antichrist. The first seal is white horse and a rider. You see more than the horse, you see the rider, because and he that sat upon him, he that sat upon the white horse. It describes the rider on the white horse. He had a bow, a crown was given to him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Okay, he went taking authority. Okay, so he possesses a bow, he's given a crown, and his purpose is he goes forth to conquer. He goes forth to conquer. He's conquering. Now, y'all listen, no lie. I just took a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. I always wanted to do it. Matter of fact, I see Sister Joyce on there. I'm gonna hang out. I hope to hook up with Evan, because Evan's a hunter, and I think he's bow hunter. But I just took archery. I just took up archery. Now, I know that if you got a bow, you need an arrow. Why? Every commentary I looked at has asked, why is it just a bow? Because the indication here, and I'm gonna spit over some interpretation. This person conquers without war. He conquers without an actual war at this point. He conquers with words. It's a threat. Okay? Because remember that the first punishment among those who were believers was word threat. Okay? And he's conquering even to take jurisdiction later on, chapter 15 of Matthew 24. Where? In the church. The Antichrist desires to operate from the pulpit privilege, thus making wrong to seem right. Now you think about how that plays out where we are now. There's so many things that we've taken for God's word to be wrong, but somebody says it's okay now. You begin to say that the word war is already on. Stan,
Pastor,
okay, let me get Stan. I think he had his hand up and down.
okay.
Diane.
So Thessalonians talk about God will set up a strong delusion.
Mhm.
And then I think it was in Daniel where he talks about when you see
Yes.
him standing there. And so my thought is, what I'm wondering is, not many people, or not everybody gonna be able to see it, because if God sets up a strong delusion, you're not gonna see him because you're gonna be under the delusion. So it's gonna take I guess it's gonna take a special. I'm just trying to wonder how we're gonna see him coming when his delusion, his deception, that's the word I was looking for. His deception is going to be great.
Yes, the deception is going to be great, but think about what feeds deception, and think about the diet that's necessary, or the mindset that's necessary for a lie to win. Okay, how many of y'all know some folk just really rather believe the lie?
Yeah.
Because the lie tells us what to hear. Okay, so it's no fantasy then that with the Antichrist he's going to come. It's definitely going to undermine the commandments. We talked about. Matter of fact, I don't want to get. Yeah, I will. I'll get into it. So if I get deep, just I'm not planning on getting deep, but I need to. If you ever hear the concept of Marxism, M-A-R-X-ism,
Yeah.
as a part of a culture, then you'll begin. I didn't intend to play this in the Bible study, but part of the Marxism theory is that you had to neutralize the nuclear family. Okay, for Marxism to exist, which is another rule, if you will, of conducting ourselves. It means, okay, Marxism says that God's rules are oppressive. The concept of God's orders are oppressive. And in order to do that, you have to nullify what God said. You're gonna have to do the same thing in today's society that was done in Genesis chapter 3, when the question was asked, did God say this? To raise a question to command and have us rethink that maybe we're better off disobeying these things and living in, the freer area. Now think about this, because let me mark another text and write this down, and then I'll write to you, Diane. Look at 2 Timothy chapter. I was trying to check chapter 3, verse 1 through 3. Chapter 3, verse 1 through 3. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. Because you asked a great question about the mindset, because even many other folk who in church now who got God's word are easily persuaded by a lie, because what's said is totally in error about what's being read. You can read and see that what that's being said can't be true, right? Okay. So the strong delusion is to where before he's equipped our mind and brought us back, now he's going to actually let us go and began to eat after our diet. Here's what Paul says. Paul said, this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be what? Lovers of what? See, here's what give us the diet for that lie. Men become lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to what? Parent. That's the nuclear family, y'all, okay? Unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce despisers of those that are good, okay? So number one, they ain't gonna like what's right, and they ain't gonna like whoever pushes for right. Does that make sense? And this is going to be the appetite of the last days. I think we're almost already there, but you know, Marxism says you got to get rid of it. And if you get rid of it, then you can entertain the other things. Sister Diane.
Pastor, can we go back as far as Genesis with Adam and Eve to say the delusional part? And that the Antichrist was there in the form of a snake? Because he deluded her with half-truths.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah.
But we can go back to the beginning.
Yeah, because he really don't have any new game. It's just we're falling for the same hoodwink. Okay. And if we're I told you what I think what Stan mentioned earlier, like I said, the flood, they built a tower.
Yeah.
He mentioned about people going to space. That's just a higher tower. In other words, we're not trying to get what's right. We're trying to do everything we can within our power to disobey God and avoid the consequences of disobedience. Okay. So that being said, we got a white horse, which is, and I'll undergird it. This is counterfeit leadership, counterfeit government. Okay. It's Antichrist for the official term, but it is a non-legit system of rule. Okay, Sister Cannon.
Pastor, you said something that I kind of wanted to make sure I got, which was you were saying that I lost my train of thought raising my hand.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You were saying when you were talking about the falsehoods or the deception, you were saying that he was going to deceive us with words. See, try to take that from me, but that's something that you said. You were saying that we were going to be deceived by word, like not he wouldn't have an arrow in his bow, but we'd be deceived by the word. So what? I guess I didn't know if you were going to kind of speak to how we could not be deceived, because we were focusing on how we could be deceived and how hard it was, but how could we not be deceived when we're being deceived by word? Is it just knowing the word of God and having a relationship with him?
That's it. That's primarily it, because again, if I took in what and that's why I use the Timothy passage. He said, in the last days, there should be men will become lovers of their own selves, and we will reap teachers having itching ears. So I'm gonna be honest. Would I rejoice if I found a doctor who said, look, wait a minute, all that stuff they're telling you about exercising and pulling off chicken and not eating late and you ain't gotta do that. I'm gonna give you a pill and you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and you're gonna get down to your regular size. Hey, look, I'm gonna tell you what, if I didn't have the money, I'll borrow some money from y'all to get that pill, okay? Because again, that's the desire that's in our mind. If we, whatever we want, watch this, we find a way to finance it. I see people now, and it's kind of interesting to me. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but it's interesting to me to hear and talk to one person. It's almost like talking to people on different sides with two different sides of the face. Because if the conversation was, man, yeah, I'm still being really careful. I ain't doing that. That's why, Pastor, I'm not in church and yada yada yada. But I am going to Africa next month. I'm like, what? I mean, and I'm exaggerating Africa, but I'm just saying my point of it is, okay, so what makes the boldness to go to Africa, but you can't go? You understand? And what it all boils down to, and all of us got it. Every single one of us got that. Every single one of us got a flesh. And if we're not careful, the love of the flesh, remember that money is what? The love of money. And why do we love money? Because money will help to take care of the flesh's itinerary. The flesh got itineraries that the spirit don't have. I mean, and you can't do a lot of stuff. You really can't make your flesh shine unless you got some financing, right? So we're going to make sure that the flesh gets some money. We're going to make sure. And so what has to happen is that we have to arrest ourselves and have to be really, really, really be honest with ourselves and ask, almost like from that movie, what was that? A Few Good Men. Do you want the truth? Do you want the truth? Because in fact, if the truth, and I put it on my devotion yesterday, getting ready for the lesson today, it's been stated that, in a world of deception, in a world of where deception is normal, speaking the truth is revolutionary. People don't speak the truth that often. So we gotta develop our appetite to let God's word be true and every man a liar. And Lord, tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. We got to do that, because otherwise we set ourselves up for deception, because somebody will sure enough tell us what we want to hear if they think it will log our alliance, or it will make our, man, my time is up. Okay, I need, but hey, I'm glad it started this way. So we there. I said we're gonna get that 4 of the horsemen. I ain't even getting 1 of the horsemen. But we got it. We're beginning to ungird it. Okay, so
I think Brother JP and Brother
I'm sorry,
Terrence had their hands up.
JP. I'm sorry, JP. Let me deal with that, because
I'm sorry, I'm on JP's computer.
Oh, okay.
okay, Mr. JP.
I was just thinking about this deceiver, the Antichrist, could be like someone in power, like a president or, a leader that is really cunning and accepted by the public and really love him, and will grasp on to what he tells us, and that way people will be taken in.
Yeah, you hit a home run. That's a home run, and then some. Because again, I think it was on our Monday night, Sister Manlove mentioned our political. Sometimes we get sidetracked, and I think sometimes we get bombarded with the political concepts, because I think we got stupid things on both sides of the aisle and the whole 9 yards. But we who are Christians got to be. We honestly got to stand for truth and speak truth to power, no matter what side of the thing is. Sister Chrissy, you just said something that I said earlier, and let me see if I can. So I won't go farther. I'll hang out with where I'm at now. I want to make sure, because you said the person who comes in the Antichrist got to be liked and so forth and so on. Okay, let me do some things, and I'm gonna take a risk in doing this. How many of y'all know that? Because it's interesting. I heard the same argument from both sides. I really heard the same argument from both sides when I'm talking about right now, Democrat and Republican. Okay. I heard people, y'all heard of all that stuff that Trump did, who he with, all that stuff, right? How could y'all be right and be with him, right? Y'all heard it, right? Come on, be honest. I did too. I mean, because it was wrong. Okay. And I heard people on the right side, so quote unquote right side, evangelicals say, well, he ain't pastor, he's president. Does that sound anywhere near familiar, y'all? Because we who are color probably had our proudest moment when Obama became president.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Because he was our president, and then he pushed some of the same-sex things and set us on that, Biden is of course covering now. We said the same thing. He ain't pastor, he's president.
Right.
I think I might have said that.
My point is, we got to stand for right, regardless of be it Trump or Biden or Obama or whomever.
Right.
And we got to be able to stand that, because again, as you're right, it would be real hard, honestly, for Trump to be our Antichrist.
Yeah, because we don't.
What Sister J.
I agree.
You gotta have some anyway. So that don't make him holy. That definitely don't put him. I want you to understand my full argument. That definitely don't put him on the other side. That don't put him on God's side by any means. Right. I'm just saying that in this whole concept of tug of war and tick for tack, we got to understand that truth is truth no matter who. Exactly. So based upon what Sister Cannon was asking, and I think Sister Sister Christie actually recorded, you can't even take it from somebody you like. You got to be able to say, okay, let me validate whatever you said and make sure it's consistent with the word of God. Because at the end of the day, what we got in chapter 4 and 5 is Christ wins, Christ rules. And since he's the only one that's going to rule, he's the only one that's going to prove, which is why, you know, when we look at Romans chapter 10 and chapter 12, both of them chapters both equate to thoughts that help us tonight. You know, I wish that they were saved, but they're not. They got their own thing. That's what he says in 10 and chapter 12. He said we need to give our whole body, you know, we might prove that what is acceptable will of God, which means that at the end of the day, he is what's going to be the approving authority. The standard of Christ, not the standard of anybody else. I don't care, because we brought into this whole thing the concept, well, does that seem right? Does that seem fair? And I've heard the argument. I'm an apologist too. I mean, in terms of trying to defend the faith, because I heard it, well, yeah, but you know, homosexuality and heterosexuality, yeah, they're all sins. But let me ask you a question. Let me just ask you a question. If you were lost, would you rather be lost in your hometown or in a foreign country? Because while they're both sins, the difference is distance from getting correction. Does that make sense? Or did I shoot that bullet? Did I shoot that off? What I'm saying is, while we know that sin is sin, and that is absolutely true, there are sins that are farther away from the corrective issue. And you know, again, it's like being broke and a whole lot of broke. If I got a bill that's $50 and I only got $45, I got a chance at least reaping up getting it paid. But if I got $5 million and I only got $45, then that's a farther away concept. So the thing is distance. And I think that that's what we ought to infer, that it's not about the love of concept. It's really about where God says, and then our willingness to make truth the standard. Okay, Terrence, let me get you, and we'll close it tonight. I just need to end with number one and trying to get us to understand that, because I really want you to tie together the notes I've given to you. Okay.
I really think that, I'm on? I'm on?
Hello.
Okay, I was really thinking that along the lines you were thinking, because
Okay.
like the president,
back from the mic a little bit, because
Okay, like the president, he talks about accepting this, and then we have Pride Month, and the devil ain't in no hurry, and everything. The more that we get fed this stuff, the more it starts to be acceptable by us, and that's why we got to be focused on God and the Word, so that we could won't be pulled in.
Well, yeah, and if you notice what Jesus said in that chapter 24, he said that the persecution happened. Why? He said because they start hating righteousness, and then they start hating those who stand for righteousness. That's how.
Yeah.
See, and one of the ways not to get hated, right?
Not to say nothing.
There you go.
Or do nothing.
Okay.
So the Antichrist is not going to polarize one for the other. The Antichrist is going to have the skills to kind of bring the Republicans and the Democrats, or bring the opposing forces together under one umbrella of falsehood.
Yeah.
Not the opposing things.
Yeah, and I honestly believe, from taking a snapshot of the future in terms of what we're going to, that our ultimate problem ain't gonna be Republicans and no Democrats. It ain't gonna be libertarians or Tea Party.
Rich and poor.
It's not gonna be any of those things. It's gonna actually be a moving away, a falling away from truth, and it's gonna be embraced by a government party. That's why when you began to see this first white horse with a rider on it, and he's got bow, he's conquering and set forth to conquer. What? See, the conquering without a bow, if he's not doing a shot, is he's doing it all to what? Diplomatically. That's what I was talking about with the tongue. He's doing it, oh, this makes better sense, this makes better sense. And that one person who may be able to unite some kind of way, the Republicans and Democrats, Tea Party and whomever else, and yada, 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 and put them all together, he's going to have a smooth tongue. He's going to have a smooth tongue. Going to absolutely have to have a smooth tongue. But can't we all just get along? I mean, that particular part, that's going to become the birth of the first horse, which is white. Now, I gave you notes on the second horse that corresponded with Matthew. Last thing I'm saying, we're out. Okay, because in this one, I told you Matthew said in verse 6 and 7, the first thing he said afterwards is there'll be wars, rumors of wars, nation shall fight against nation. Well, look at the second horse, and that's all I'm gonna do is read it. We'll talk about it next week. The second horse, second seal, red horse and rider. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast come and say, I heard the second beast say, come and see. And there went out another horse that was red. His power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth. Okay, this dude, this power is war. This concept, opposite of peace, is what? War. Okay, so taking peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a grace sword. In other words, he was very effective. Now, I'd almost believe that at least if he ain't got here, I think he's somewhere around Wilmington with all the shootings we got, et cetera, so on, because again, these are the concepts that we get, and we're just going to grow closer and closer into that domain. I'm going to actually uncover this a little bit more next week. So my time is about 10 minutes over. Any other questions? I'm going to stop sharing now. Any questions before I let us go? I want to honor our time. Did I confuse anybody? Anybody confused? Did it make sense?
That was good.
Okay, did it make sense? Okay, good. Because when we start seeing these seals, there's gonna be a whole lot of. That's why I don't believe that the first horse white is Jesus. The first white horse is consistent with all Bible prophecy that he's gonna let somebody come that is going to begin an administration of deception. And the first deception is that he's white, that is white, or that is clean, that is pure, that is okay. Because when you start saying that all this stuff is okay, why would God even waste his time saying it was wrong if he knew is okay?
Makes sense to me.
Okay, all right. Terrence, is that your hand again, or is that, I'm sorry, question?
No, my hand ain't up, but I can say something if you want me to.
Is that your hallelujah? Okay.
No, it just never got put down.
Okay, all right, cool.
Oh yeah, my bad.
Not a problem. Okay, so we'll unless there's a question, we'll pick it up right here on next week, and I will send you PowerPoint from last week, which is chapter 5. I'm sorry.